Hi YouTubers, and I'm back for another YouTube video of what would have happened if this were in real life RhinoTMRT gameplay series. Now I've been trying to over and over and over again, in which case I guess kind of does make a lot of perfectly good sense. I've been trying to find a new topic for everything and all. Kind of like how I explained for the trailer reaction YouTube videos and all that, and I guess it actually does make a lot of sense. I guess it does, and hopefully I'll come up with something, and yeah, I guess I probably will. And I guess that's that. So yeah, I guess that's that. So yeah. So this is what would have happened if the Rio Free movie were in real life. Now we cut open to the beginning where Blue, Jewel, and their three children, I forgot their names, are enjoying their lives. Well, this of course takes place a few couple of years after the Rio 2 movie. So this is the Rio Free movie, where of course Blue and Jewel and all their children are enjoying themselves, and Jewel and their friends and their children are enjoying themselves. Even the human and the two human characters that I forgot about, and yeah, and everybody else. So yeah, they're all enjoying themselves, doing perfectly well. Perfectly well. That is until when one of Blue and Jewel's children accidentally destroys something, and they all go back to their bedrooms and all. So yeah, it's sort of that movie, and then I guess that kind of just makes sense. Then we time jump all the way. Then we time jump 33 years later, we're time jump 33 years later. So if we time jump 33 years later, and if Rio 2 came out, Rio 2 was set 3 years after the first movie, then that means that Rio 3, the 33 years later, this means that this takes place 36 years. So this whole movie as of right now is taking place 36 years after the Rio 1 movie. So for Rio 3, this is how it's going to go. Blue and Jewel's children, three children, I forgot their names, are all enjoying, are even after 33 years later, now with them. Now we get the time jump, and now we finally see Blue and Jewel's children as adults, which is kind of very obvious, and it kind of does make sense because I have this blue thing on here. So yeah, I got them both mixed up. I got both the character Blue from Rio and Rio mixed up. I got both of them mixed up, and I clearly didn't know. So yeah. Anyways, Blue and Jewel's three children, now grown up three grown up adult blue birds, are enjoying themselves on their own, and they have their own families, and they have their own families, and they have their own wives. They have their own wives and their own children. And then it just so happens that all of their children actually are friends with each other, well, mainly because of their parents and their grandparents, and then Jewel's father and their grandfather, who is Jewel's dad, from the Rio 2. So yeah, this is gonna be one of those movies where some characters do some bad things, and then we time jump, to when the character is a lot older, which that's kind of how I'm doing this. So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. So Blue and Jewel's three children, now all grown up, now having wives and children, are all enjoying themselves. That is until Blue and Jewel's children get into a fight, which actually makes sense. There was a consequence for Blue and Jewel's children's children, and here was the idea. So Blue's children's children and Blue's children, Blue and Jewel's children and Blue and Jewel's children's wives, all all think on this, that they can't blame, that they can't use, that they aren't used, that they can't use the same consequence. So instead of using the same consequence before the time jump, they actually, Blue and Jules' children and their wives, they all say that they can take, they all say to take a trip. They all say to take a trip, all of them flying across the world and all. So yeah. Meanwhile, there was actually meanwhile in Brazil, and well, yeah, I guess meanwhile in Brazil, the one of the sons from one of the sons who the son of one of the sons from the son from remember those three characters from the first Rio movie? Well, they had a son. It turns out that it turns out that they mysteriously gave birth to their own son, which actually is basically just called Miguel. So they called him Miguel, and they called him Miguel, after the Cobra Kai character. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. So Miguel, who is of course planning to get rid of all the blue macaws, which he's planning to get rid of all the blue and red macaws from who's planning to get rid of all the birds in Brazil, and is planning to get rid of all of them, and is planning all that out, and to avenge both his father and uncle and godfather, who were the free criminals that worked with Nigel all those years ago. So yeah, so Miguel is basically like, I mean, I forgot the three characters' names. So I just kept it there. So Miguel actually is going all around in all the other areas, and yeah, he is. When he just so happens that when only to find out that Blue and Jules' children, they actually had wives and children, and he spots them, which of course mysteriously catches his eye. So he actually follows them without detecting himself, which is actually very different. And yeah, I guess that kind of does make sense. So they're on the hunt against him, and yeah, I guess that kind of does make sense. So it makes sense. And then Miguel has easily trapped Blue and Jules' children's wives and children, and their wives children's children. So Blue and Jules' children's children and their mothers and fathers are all trapped by Miguel, and then they have an idea, and then they both have an idea, and that the only way to protect Blue and Jules' children's children is by sending them away. So they send them away to where else? They send them back to Minnesota, which is the place where the main character, which was the place where the main character lived. That the female character, that one from there. So yeah, I kind of wanted to do this one, and I guess it just felt very obvious. So yeah, I just keep it where it stands, and it's just very obvious. So yeah, I just keep it where it stands, and that's that. So Blue and Jules' children's and children, now having no one else left to do, and yes, of course, all the other characters, those other bird characters, they all make appearances too. They just don't have a lot of screen time. I mean, same with Blue and Jewel. They don't have a lot of screen time as it is. So Blue and Jewel's children's children are actually, lost in desperate need of help. Just so happen when they come across Jewel's father, who if you remember Jewel's father from Rio 2, he actually makes a huge appearance in here. So he eventually takes Blue and Jewel's children's children back home, in the hopes that is, and then so he takes them back home merely as adults, and they all prepare for war against Miguel, who they actually heard who they actually found out that he was actually the son of the who's actually the son and the nephew and the godson of the free criminals from the first Rio movie. So yeah, it's gonna be something like that, and I guess it kind of does make a lot of sense. So yeah, they plan out their fighting battle scene, and yeah, I guess that kind of does make a lot of sense. And then they sneak in, so it's gonna be like one of those movies where gonna be like one of those movies. Also gonna be like one of those movies where the person is captured and all that, and yeah, I guess that kind of does make a lot of sense. So yeah, I just keep it where it stands. So yeah. So anyways, Blue and Jules children's children, they all enjoy. They easily prepare. They easily sneak up towards Miguel's place. In which case, I guess kind of does make sense. And note that Miguel is actually an important. Note that Miguel, who's related to the first free antagonist, that joined with Nigel from Rio 1, is actually going to be a major part in the sequel series later on. So yeah, he actually is. So yeah. So eventually the other person, so then all the, Rio, Blue and Jules children's children, and Jules father, they from Rio 2, all prepare themselves for war, themselves for battle against Miguel, and it turns out that they actually do perfectly well. So they have one big fighting battle scene. Everyone, they're all birds from all Brazil are all going against them, and yeah, I guess that kind of just makes sense. So yeah, all of them are going against them. And then before the big fighting battle scene ends, Jules' father actually dies. So yeah, he actually dies because of Miguel. Then Miguel actually falls down, and then Miguel actually falls down to his death. So yeah, that's kind of how it would play out. And then eventually, Blue and Jewel and all the other birds of Brazil, and Blue and Jewel's children's children, and Blue and Jewel's children and their wives, they all go to Jewel's father's funeral, and then they all celebrate for putting an end to Miguel, who's related to the first free criminals of the first Rio movie. And then they all live happily ever after. The end. And then we'll have a post-credit scene where Nigel Jr. is born, and he finds out that after Miguel failed from the son of the free criminals from the first Rio movie. Nigel Jr. eventually says, "I will avenge you, Miguel, and the free criminals and the parents that I once worked with." And then cut to black. He eventually laughs. So yeah, that's my take on the Rio. What would have happened if the Rio Free movie were in real life? Now, I couldn't come up with a much better idea. I know it does seem like a little bit of a rehash, but I know it does seem a little bit of like that, but at least it's my idea, and I wanted to give a character sacrifice and all that. So yeah. Anyway.